I remember it like yesterday when Matt came down the stairs and said so casually with a smile, I booked a one-way ticket to Santiago, Chile. I thought to myself, is this real? Can we really leave our amazing careers, friends, and family? Fast forward 10 months later, after all the hard conversations, endless checklists, and heartfelt goodbyes, we were heading to the airport with one backpack each, about to set out for a multi-year adventure around the world. Filled with excitement, we had no idea what to expect, but we knew it would be a fun ride. Join us as we share what we are learning on our journey of a lifetime. This is Passport Joy Travel Talk with Nikki and Matt Javit.
All right, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it wherever you might be listening to this, anywhere in the world. We've currently been downloaded in over 60 countries, so that's exciting. That our podcast is growing and people are interested in hearing the story that we have to tell as we travel the world full time, and share our journey on this podcast and on passportjoy.com to help inspire others and talk about destinations that you may want to go to and give tips on weekend getaways or week-long stays. Again, my name is Matt Javit alongside Nikki Javit, and we are a traveling couple. Today we are talking about Machu Picchu and Cusco, Peru, and some of the day trips around Cusco, and a journey that we loved and enjoyed and will forever be in our memory. This was part of our trip that was amazing. So we'll get into those details and give advice and tips on how you can make your trip the best and things you need to consider before you make your trip to Machu Picchu. As always, please feel free to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. That really helps us out. And if you're just getting caught up on passportjoy.com or this podcast, feel free to go to the Journey So Far tab on the website. This breaks down our journey month by month, country by country, and really just lays it out on where we've been, what we've done, and has links embedded into the kind of that story there I built on the website. Again, the Journey So Far tab at the top of the page at passportjoy.com lays it all out there. And in case you break away before the end, sign up for the newsletter at passportjoy.com, where you can get weekly highlights of the things that we're doing. I send those out every Thursday. It goes over the things that we did the week before and things we're looking forward to in the week ahead, and breaks it all down and gives you a chance to kind of stay in the loop on what's happening as we travel around the world. All right, let's get on to this episode. All right, we are going to talk about Cusco, Peru, and our trip there, and that we love so much, and all the time we had a chance to spend there. We're going to talk at a high level about Cusco, advice on Cusco, some of the ins and outs as you're making the trip, things to think about, day trips to the Inca ruins around Cusco. Nikki and I's advice is to spend more than a day or two in Cusco and make that a longer trip. A lot of people just go in to see Machu Picchu. They don't get a chance to see Cusco as much. And we're going to talk about that. And then obviously the Machu Picchu overview and our tips and advice and things that we did to make it an awesome trip. So that's what we're going to go over in this podcast. So let's start off with Cusco, Peru. It's located deep into the Andes Mountains. It's the former capital of the Inca Empire. We'll talk about the Inca ruins a bunch here, but essentially these are the indigenous people that lived in Peru at this time that built these amazing statues, sculptures, just land, I guess, just work pieces of art, but also were used for their living. We'll talk about the irrigation systems and all the different things that they built there. Those amazing rock structures. So we'll get into that. And it's a layover point. Cusco is obviously a layover point for backpackers and travelers as they get to go see the Machu Picchu and go to the Inca Trail. The Inca stonework can be seen in the surrounding buildings throughout the city, as I just said, with a touch of the Spanish influence as Spain went and discovered or more like landed there. They didn't discover it, obviously, because the Incas were already there. But as the Spaniards came over and started capturing this land and taking it over time from the Incas, you see a large Spanish influence in Peru, as we have also seen in Chile and other parts of Peru as well. You're also going to see we'll talk about the winding, steep, and inclined, narrow cobble streets of central Cusco as they weave themselves throughout the hillsides of the city. And then there's also a ton of foot traffic from the backpackers and other people in the city. And there's stray dogs. There's tons of stray dogs that run the streets of Peru and Chile. It's kind of like a South American theme that we've touched on before, but there's dogs everywhere. I took a photo of a pack of dogs at one point that had like 16 or 18 dogs in a group. So it's something to be aware of. But they're not as harmful as you would think. They understand their role in the society, I guess. And then as you're going through Cusco, obviously there's smells of different food in the air, barbecue and horns honking, and just the lushness of the Andes Mountains and its beauty. We really enjoyed Cusco. So to touch on it, here's some tips and tricks we're going to get into on things to think about, and just I guess the way of life of the city and things that you want to be aware of as you make that trip and that plan to go to Cusco, Peru.
Yeah, so I thought it would be a good idea just if you thought about doing a trip to Cusco, Peru, just to put together some tips just to save you some time and money and maybe just to keep you safe, as I wish I knew these prior to going there. And I did know some, but after spending significant amount of time there, these really helped us during our time and during our travels there. So as far as transportation goes, getting in and around Cusco is really easy and it's super safe there. So the main mode of transportation is actually taxis. So taxi fare is very, very cheap. And so the currency in Peru is the sol. So you can pretty much go anywhere for under $2 US dollars. So once you get outside of the main centro, the price goes up. But again, you can go anywhere for under $2. The one thing I did want to mention is that it is not uncommon for a taxi driver to not have a meter inside their vehicle. It's completely normal. And although that may seem a tad bit shady, to just hop in some cab driver's car and not see a meter running, like you're getting swindled or something, it's normal. So what you want to remember is just as you hop in, give your address of your final destination, work out a deal with your driver, see how much it's going to cost you prior to, him or her taking off. And if you don't know how to speak Spanish, you can always just write down your address on a piece of paper, hand it to your taxi driver, and they can tell you how much it's going to cost in sols. And then they can take you to your destination. So it's not weird if you don't see that meter running. You can just work out that deal and they'll take you there. Another thing is that food. So food in general, there's so many different options for dining throughout the entire city. There are tons of restaurants. I mean, I'm not even joking. There's barbecues, there's regular restaurants, there's restaurants that are going to be based on the Peruvian cuisine. And then there's restaurants for me, like they specialize in vegetarian and vegan cuisine. So the thing in Peru is that you're going to see some very eccentric places serving Peruvian cuisine, and it's going to be a little bit different from what you're normally used to. So the local delicacies there, they include what is called cuy. And so that's guinea pig. And so in Peru, cuy or guinea pigs are not seen as pets. So you will find that you may see like a girl or a boy standing on a street corner with like a fully intact guinea pig skewered through a pole, and it might even have like a tomato in its mouth. But that in Peru is like a normal thing. So at first it's kind of appalling for animal lovers out there, but it's a delicacy, and it's people come from far and wide to actually eat that. So a lot of the restaurants are going to have that on as a staple item on their menu. Other things that you will see in Peru are varieties of alpaca meat. They have meat on skewers. They have alpaca burgers, etc. So it's just a little bit different. Other things that they're going to serve is maize, which is corn. And then in Peru, an interesting fact that we learned was that they have over 3,400 different types of potatoes. So if you go to a restaurant and they're not serving potatoes, that's completely unheard of. You're almost likely to find some sort of potato dish. Another really common dish that I pretty much saw on every restaurant's menu is something called Lomo Saltado, which is typically just like a stir-fried beef, and they add various vegetables to it, like onions and tomatoes and things like that. And then they have another thing called ají de gallina, which is a creamy chicken something. So whether it's baked or fried or something like that, it's just a creamy chicken. And then in Peru, like a lot of other South American countries, they also have a lot of different varieties of ceviche. So you have your fresh fish or whatever it may be. It could also be shrimp, but you have that fresh ceviche and it's mixed with your lime and your onion and salt and chilies. So it's a really good option for those of you who really like seafood.
Yeah, and I'll give you my 2 cents on food real quick since I'm the taste tester of the couple. Ceviche is the greatest. I love ceviche and it's one of my favorite foods in the world, especially in Peru. It's something about, I actually had a chance to make it when we went to Lima a few weeks after this trip, and it's an art. I mean, there's a lot that goes into making really good ceviche, and it is delicious, and I love it. I could eat it every day of my life and never get sick of it. It's so good. I did have the alpaca. I had it on a skewer when we traveled into the hillside. That was actually in Chile, but I have eaten alpaca. And I couldn't tell you. It's like people say it tastes like chicken or whatever, but it didn't have a distinct taste that was memorable. I never did try the cuy. It was one of those things where I was gonna try it if the situation it played itself right. And Nikki, every time we would see these guinea pigs on a stick, she would freak out a little bit. But I still wanted to attempt to try it, but it was never a situation that played itself and made it a good scenario for me to eat it. So it never happened. So I didn't take advantage of that. But a lot of the dishes, I do like Peruvian food a lot. I think it can be fried a bunch. There's probably a little bit more fried food than we're typically used to. But overall, it was good, and it was a lot of fun to take part in that.
So back to basically some things that I noticed when we were walking around. There's a lot of artisan markets in and around Cusco. And just to know that it's really hard to decipher like the quality of the products that you're trying to purchase. So on our travels, we basically don't buy any of these goods. And it's really sad because, I find myself, although I'm not like a material person, I do wish that I could buy some of these things because they're just absolutely beautiful, especially if when you're buying things that are really truly handmade and of good quality. I would love to be able to purchase these things, bring them back to my home or, hand them out for gifts to my friends and family. But I just don't have the bag space, number one. And two, some of these countries, to find a post office and to ship these things back home, it's so expensive. And some places I don't have the option of a post office. And I have shipped things back home before where they've gotten lost in the mail for months. So we had the luxury we were with a tour guide, and they really, really, I guess, sort of educated us and broke down on how to tell the difference between real alpaca products like sweaters, scarves, tapestries, etc., which tend to be like cool to the touch and heavier, softer and warmer, versus like a mixture of alpaca and synthetic fibers or a cotton blend. And then he also explained how to tell if threads of your product are truly colored from natural dyes. So in Peru, they dye their fabrics with natural dyes like plants and roots and insects and even flowers, which tends to leave your fabrics having this really dull or muted color. But this dull and muted color lasts longer versus being dyed with brightly colored synthetic dyes, which would be from a petroleum byproduct in earth materials, and that would cause your fabrics to fade over time. So even though those products that you see that are synthetic dyed look a lot better at first because they're brightly colored and more fluorescent looking, you don't want to actually buy those products. They might be more appealing and they might pop out more. You actually want to buy the products that look duller. So I find that really interesting because we tend to be drawn more towards things that pop as opposed to the duller muted things. So I don't know. Another thing is my rule of thumb is just always know that if something is the price of a product is too good to be true, it usually is. So these real alpaca products are expensive and they rightfully should be. It's alpaca
hair. So you're shearing an animal, they're raising an animal, and it takes a long time for that fur or for that hair to grow on that animal. And so you're not going to find something like a real alpaca sweater for $5. So if something's cheap, you know that it is too good to be true and that you're probably buying like a knockoff. As far as accommodation goes, so Cusco, I mean, there's just such a wide range of where you can stay. So we stayed in an Airbnb the entire time that we were there, but there's 5-star luxury hotels. Those are usually located mainly in like the central area, but there's also budget hostels, Airbnb options like we stayed in. And for me, quite honestly, I mean, we definitely stayed probably, I don't know, about 10 minutes away from downtown Central. But like I said, by car. But the Airbnb being that far away was not ever really an issue, considering that you could just hop into a taxi and pay $2. And a lot of times we found ourselves just walking because it really is a safe area and there's so much to see and there's so much to take in sensory wise that it wasn't something that like really bothered us. So if you're trying to save money and not spend $200 to $300 a night, because that's what you're going to pay for those 5-star luxury hotels and upwards. And there's hotels that are thousands of dollars a night. An Airbnb option is a really good option. Another thing is what to wear. So, okay, this for Cusco in general, depending on the time of year that you go and visit Cusco and what type of outdoor activity you're actually partaking in will definitely dictate what type of clothing you're going to need to pack and what you're going to have to wear. So the peak tourist season is from June to September, and during their winter when it's basically the dry season, and their rainy season is from November until March. January is their warmest month when their average temperature is actually about 52 degrees Fahrenheit. And their coldest month is in July, where their average temperature is about 45 degrees Fahrenheit. So just know that nights get pretty chilly in Cusco. And one thing to know, because it really did affect me. So I don't like cold weather. And I mean, with that being said, I mean, I can handle it as long as I'm properly prepared, but homes in Cusco and hotels do not have central heating. So you may be able to find a place that has a space heater, but like our Airbnb did not have that. So most people stay warm by using alpaca blankets or wool blankets and just by simply layering their clothing. So if you're not a person that can handle that type of environment, then I would definitely make sure that you pack tons of layers of clothing, like warm sweaters, jackets, extra scarves, and hats. Because I actually, although the place that we stayed at provided ample wool blankets, I slept in my coat every night because I would shiver and it was really cold for me. Although Matt was fine, I was just freezing. And after 10 days of that, it really, really got to me. So just make sure to bring the appropriate clothing because for some of you, like myself, I was really, really cold.
All right, water. You do not want to drink the water, the tap water in Peru. I got this advice even prior to going to there. We've got a Peruvian buddy and talked to him a little bit before we went. He just said, he reiterated, do not drink the water. Even the major hotels, if you're staying there, and avoid ice. If you're cocktailing at night and you think it's okay to have a little bit of ice in your bourbon or in your vodka, you might find you're going to get sick the next day. You just don't want to, it's something you just want to avoid at all costs. And sometimes they'll have packaged ice that you can get at a premium, but if you really need ice, I would do that. So bottled water is pretty inexpensive, right? And yeah, it's really cheap. So it's available, it's there, it's everywhere, and people just know that you got to get bottled water everywhere. And you can also get it with, you can get it cone gas or scene gas. Scene gas means with gas. Scene means without, cone means with. And that's kind of the carbonated water is the option. And that's Nikki's favorite. Haggling, it's a normal part of their shopping process in Peru. So when you're going to souvenir stores or the artisan stores, markets that Nikki was talking about, there's really, they'll price it, but it's kind of known you have the option to bring them down a bit. But I will say this, if you begin the haggling process, make sure that you are in the market to buy. You never want to haggle and then they get to your price and then you walk away. If you only want to start haggling on items that you really intend to purchase if you can meet at a particular price with the salesperson. So keep that in mind. Don't just haggle to haggle. I've been with people that just like to mess around and haggle and try to get people down on cost, and then they end up walking away anyway. Even if you get close, that's not cool. If you're going to buy something, make sure you buy it once you get that person near or close to your number. And when you're at the market, realize that they have a lot of different things and some crazy things. I recently talked about this, but we were in a market where they were selling, you see all kinds of different items, from clothing to trinkets to food. And we were in a situation where there was a lady selling bananas, and at the very next station, right next to her bananas, there were about 4 goat heads. When I actually took a photo of it because it freaked me out so much, I was in a situation where I went above it because there was a second floor, and I took the photo down, and there's like bananas next to a pile of goat heads. And then we actually went to another market where it was more of a food-focused market where there was piles and piles of horse snouts, which is crazy for us. I'm not sure if they chop those up and put them in a stew, but it was just different. So be aware that you're going to see different things. Some of it is spectacularly awesome. Some of it is shocking, but it definitely goes on in the markets, and you got to be aware of that.
So moving along, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was when you get to Cusco, the number one thing that you should buy is called a Cusco tourist ticket. So if you plan on visiting the ruins and the top tourist sites yourself and just go in and around Cusco, it's really suggested that you purchase this tourist ticket. It's called the Boleto Turisto del Cusco, which is simply just the Cusco tourist ticket. So you can purchase the ticket anywhere from the city's municipal tourism sites or a travel agency, and it allows you to visit the 12 historical and archaeological sites in and around Cusco. The ticket costs about 130 soles, which is like a little over $40 per person. But the great thing about it is that it's good for 10 days from the date that you purchase it. So if you're going to be in Cusco for about a week, you can cram all these sites in within that week. And it's awesome because it saves you so much money as opposed to paying for each of the individual sites' entrance fees separately. But just the one thing to know about it is that once you visit one of the sites, you can't go back. So just visit it and then you leave. And you can't share the tickets either. So it's like you have to have one ticket per person. And another thing I did want to talk about is that the way that Cusco, the city itself, is located is that it's on a really high elevation. So it's about a little over 11,000 feet. And so it causes a lot of people to suffer from altitude sickness. And so obviously altitude sickness is a tricky thing, right? So, it varies from person to person. I mean, you don't know if you're going to suffer from that until you actually are exposed to it. And it's different. So you can get a headache, you can have GI upset, so anywhere from nausea, vomiting, you lose your appetite, you could be very tired. A lot of people experience dizziness or shortness of breath. And the main thing is before you do any of these excursions or adventures, what you're supposed to do is just allow a couple days for your body to acclimate to this new altitude. And so what I would suggest is if you're going to go to a place like Cusco, before going to any of these Inca ruins or huge treks, just make sure that once you get there, use this time to walk around, Central, see the markets, go to some of these amazing restaurants, and just make sure that you're not feeling woozy, because you'd hate to go to these amazing places and then be like, bam, hit with this horrible feeling and then not truly enjoy your experience. Another thing is like when you're walking around Cusco, you'll see these little stands or even a lot of the shops or a lot of the restaurants, even in storefronts, have these little baskets, and inside these baskets, they have these cocoa leaves. And so what it is you're supposed to chew on cocoa leaves, put cocoa leaves in your tea or in your coffee, and it's really supposed to help you with this altitude sickness. So you might see people walking around with bags of these cocoa leaves, and that's what it's essentially for. And a lot of the shops will sell like little boxes of Advil to help you with your headaches associated with the altitude sickness. And sometimes it helps and sometimes it doesn't. So fortunately, Matt and I weren't hit too bad with the altitude sickness there. And we did just, chomp on some cocoa leaves just to prevent it. But it's just something to note. So if you get there and you're feeling a little off, it may be due to this.
Yeah, I put my cocoa leaves in coffee every day, and I had no problem eating them as well, just plain, because I know that it's a big deal. And it's when you're dealing with cultures that understand nature better than you take their advice. And it's not like they're pushing cocoa leaves on you because they think that they need to sell these things. It's just they understand that it works. Our host at our Airbnb had a basket full of it when we arrived, and I made full use of it. Couple of things to remember as you're making your trip there. One is toilet paper. It's a part of the world where you don't flush toilet paper down the toilet. The city's plumbing system's just not up to it, and because it's a hotbed of tourism now, and the city continues to grow, and more tourists are coming in now to see these gorgeous ruins and Machu Picchu, that they just can't handle it. So you'll see signs above the toilets in homes and hotels and public places asking you kindly to throw your toilet paper away in the small basket next to the toilet. Follow those rules, because you don't want to have an embarrassing situation where you're the person that flushes the toilet paper down the toilet and you clog it up and it ruins it for everybody, and then you're outed as being that person doesn't follow directions. And there's not always toilet paper everywhere, so Nikki would always carry toilet paper with her, just in case there was a situation where we'd have to go to the bathroom and we'd have toilet paper. And the other thing is the shower. The shower is not traditional at all compared to Western and American standards. They have electric shower heads, and if you don't know what this is, I've had photos before on our Instagram and stuff, but it's pretty crazy. It's basically wires coming out of the wall, heating up the water through the shower before it hits your skin. And in our particular case in Cusco, we had several of these during our travels in South America, but in Cusco, our one shower, Nikki and I were getting shocked on a daily basis from the water. And it can really freak you out because you're not used to it. And it did. Yeah, the knob is shocking you. So you'd be showering and you'd touch the knob because there's a little bit of metal there, and then you'd get shocked. And sometimes the shock is big, sometimes it's just tiny to jolt you, but it freaks you out. And it's something just to be aware of. It's not, if it happens to you, you're not the first person to happen to. It's just an awkward situation, and it's something that you just got to deal with. All right, let's talk about things to do in Cusco.
All right, there's tons of things to do in Cusco. We're just going to highlight some of our favorite things that we did while we were there, but don't think this is an all-inclusive list because there's so many things to do. There's San Pedro Market. So this is, again, we always talk about going to markets, but it's definitely one of our favorite things that we do. There's so many things you can see, just experience the culture, see how the locals just go about their day-to-day lives. But San Pedro Market is a place where you can buy, fresh produce. There's tons of fruit, there's nuts, there's fresh bread there. They had like their own little bakery, and this place was awesome. They actually had fresh squeezed juices. There was meats and cheeses that you could buy. There was fish. They had fish eggs there. This was a place that we saw, like, I don't even know what type of animal it was, but I'm assuming it was a horse or a donkey snout. It was like piled up on this like skewer thing, but it was just a mix of everything, you name it. It was there.
And if you're really adventurous, that's where they have food served as well. We ended up not getting it because it was literally feet from the horse snouts that we saw. So Nikki was a bit freaked out that a lot of the meat, and it looked like there was a lot of meat focused dining going on, but we had intended to go back, but it just never happened. But it's a really cool place to grab food from the locals if you can get there, and and clothes. I mean, there's everything is there.
Another place is Plaza de Armas. We've mentioned this, but it's the main square of Cusco. It's considered the starting point for many of the visiting tourists. The square itself is surrounded by like hotels and restaurants and shops and hostels. They have a main cathedral on the square as well. And the atmosphere just in general is just really super vibrant and buzzing with passerbys. It's a great place to just grab a bench and people watch. You can get a cup of coffee and sit outside and just watch everyone go by. And I did that quite often. I really, really like the vibe going on down there. You can go and visit this one place. It's called the Temple of the Sun, or its proper name is Coricancha. The temple itself is it used to be the most important place in all of Cusco. So it was dedicated to the sun god, Inti, and its walls and floors were previously adorned in gold. But when the Spanish came and captured the Incan leader, he had to offer all the rooms full of gold in exchange for his life. There are some walls that still have like a little bit of gold on it, so you can see that, but it's just truly, truly beautiful to go and see that. Another place that you can go and visit is called Saqsaywaman, and it's funny because the guide that took us there, he called it Saqsaywaman. He kept saying that, and I just always remember it that way. But it's a fortress that was created on top of a hill, and basically it overlooks all of Cusco, and basically to protect the city. It served as an important military battleground, and it's super beautiful. It has tons of these gardens. It's lush, it's green, and really, really high walls. It's just a really nice place to go and walk around. It's really beautiful. I don't know. I highly suggest to go there. Another place that we went to, it's kind of interesting because we've been to a lot of places all over the world that kind of have this similar theme, but it's called Cristo Blanco, or White Jesus, and it's a large statue of Jesus Christ on top of this hill. And I think the statue itself is about 8 meters high and it overlooks the city of Cusco, but it's just a statue kind of like similar to the statue in Rio de Janeiro with Christ extending his arm outwards. And I just think it's interesting that there's these similar statues all throughout the world and that we can find them all throughout the world. But it's a nice place. It's just a cool, I guess, overlook of the city. And the walk up the hill is very, very easy. It took like 10 minutes to get up there. But just to have the overlook of the city and to see that, it's nice. Another place we went to, which I thought was interesting, and I'm not even sure if their claim to fame is real, but it was called Paddy's Irish Bar, or Paddy's Irish Pub. And it's just located on the corner of Plaza de Armas, but they claim that they are the highest Irish-owned pub in the world at the elevation of a little over 11,000 feet. So I don't know. We went there and we watched some soccer games.
Final Four.
Yeah.
It was the NCAA Final Four, yeah. And it was cool because there were other Americans there, obviously rooting on some teams. It was small, though. It's a real small bar, and it was neat. It is a neat environment to be in, and just to be able to watch the games was a luxury, I guess. But yeah, those were the main points we want to talk about in Cusco. It's a fun town, and again, Nikki and I, we suggest do not just hit and go like a lot of people do. We understand that your time is very valuable, but we think that you can get a lot out of Cusco if you spend more than just a day there, because a lot of people would just spend a day or a day and a half and then go to Machu Picchu. We think that you just spend a little bit more time and then do some day trips from Cusco. Use Cusco as your hub and then do day trips to other parts. And now we're going to talk about some of the day trips that we took. Before we do that, just so you know, we had an opportunity to do our day trips because of a relationship we formed with our Airbnb. It was the owner's, essentially he was like the owner's son that was a driver in town. We were very creative in this. When he picked us up from the airport, he was driving us home. I struck up a conversation asking him all he did besides drive. And then I asked him if he would be open to drive us around a little bit. And he was wide open. And I liked the idea. And he obviously had done it before because I was interested in his viewpoint because he lived there his entire life. He understood the Inca ruins really well. He wasn't necessarily a tour guide. He was a driver. He was a driver that knew history. So he had a chance to take us to parts of around the city that might not have necessarily been typical tour locations, but he would pull over when Nikki and I would see an amazing view. We would just say, hey, can you pull over here? And he would pull over for 7 to 10 minutes. We could take awesome photos, get back in the car, and then continue to make our way onto the day trip that we had planned. But a lot of the stuff that we had that we wanted to do, he helped us form the plan, because there's many of these Inca ruins around the city that you want to look at. But there's a few that were highlights to us and that stuck out to us. We're going to do that. We're going to talk about the 4 main ones overall. But the other ones we went to that are on a lot of lists and we do recommend you going to are Pucara is one of them. Quinque is another one. Chinchero is like a little village. And then Tambamache. I can remember that was a lot of fun. But the 4 that really stuck out to us was probably my favorite was Moray. Now, if you've ever seen the Inca ruins where there's these massive circles, and they're perfect circles, this is Moray. And to me, I've got a video that I'll put on the show notes, but because you can just see how freaked out I am. But the circles are so perfect, and they're depressed into the earth. It actually, to me, it looked like a spaceship had landed perfectly with this outline. And so I just left there thinking, like, it's amazing that these humans could make such perfect circles back in the day when technology was limited. And it put me in a state of shock as far as, like, I just left there just shaking my head over and over. And just as we drove away, I just couldn't get out of mind. So Moray, Moray, was one of my favorite day trips that we took.
Yeah, another one that really sticks out in my mind is called Tipon. And it's basically an area that consists of agricultural terraces. And these terraces are fed by natural springs. But the springs of water are of unknown source. And the water flows throughout the ruins all year round, even when it's dry season. And scientists from all over the world were there even when we were there. They were there with clipboards. They had their little beakers out. They had, I can't even describe to you the situation. People are very, I don't even know the word I'm using. They're yeah, Matt says freaked out. I was trying to use the word respectful. They are freaked out, but they're obviously trying to figure out where the water's coming from. No one has been able to figure this out, but they're very obviously respectful of the land. So no one's there digging anything up, but they're taking water. They're allowed to take water samples, and that's it, from the flowing water that's going into these little rivers and pools of water that are collected in these terraces, and then go back to their laboratories at their universities and try to figure out the source of this water. But I could not, for the life of me, when I was seeing this water come out of the earth and then hear the stories behind it. And I was just mind blown by the fact that we live in a world where we're so concerned about running out of fresh water, and I'm now standing on this vast piece of earth where this water is so plentiful. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like, this is the answer. And I know that sounds so crazy, but it's just like, wow, like, this is so unreal. Like, I cannot believe this is in front of my eyes right now. And it was just the beauty of it as well. Like, you're standing on this lush green grass and there's flowers everywhere and there's just so much life. And I can't, it's indescribable. And then the water, and just, it's so peaceful.
The way that these rocks of all different sizes are placed together at perfect 90-degree angles, and as you look down, the straightness of the entire irrigation system, and just the lineage of how the rocks are laid out, it's mind blowing, because it's you just think about the lack of technology that they had at the time, but the idea that they could put all this together and have a master plan to build all this out to have water on a regular basis. So yeah, Tipon was another highlight for us.
The next one that was really amazing to me was called Pisac. And essentially, Pisac was ruins that were on top of a hill that are believed to have served both as like a defensive purpose at the entrance of the Sacred Valley. And it also was a place where previously thousands of holes in the side of this adjacent mountain that was on this area are thought to have been former tombs in which bodies were placed. And now these bodies have since been removed and now they are buried elsewhere. But the place itself was located in this huge valley, and it almost looked like it was parted. And you saw this piece of land open up and the mountains, and it was just beautiful. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. And all the little holes where the bodies were once kept but are now open. And so you could see like birds flying in and out of it. And it was just really, really beautiful. Again, breathtaking. It's indescribable. Nothing like you've ever seen before. And you almost wonder, like, so when these bodies were dead and then they had to then take these bodies and put them up and place them in there, like, how was that done? And then when the bodies were removed, then how was that done? So I don't know. It was just very mysterious. And then the last place that we wanted to talk about was called Owenton Tombow. So Owenton Tombow is basically a very common starting point for the Inca Trail. And the fortress itself was used to hold back and defeat the Spanish. And so it's comprised of tons of stone terraces that are taller basically than the average man. And on the very top of this fortress is what's called the Temple of the Sun, which houses large discarded stones referred to as piedras cansada, which are tired stones. And it's the wall of the 6 monoliths. And the craziest part about this is that these stones have said to have been carried from, I don't even know how many kilometers away.
Yeah, they were pointing to the other mountain that they came from because they couldn't. Away. Yeah, several kilometers away. Because the material that's in the stone could not have come from that mountain or that region. But the closest mountain that it could have come from were, like Nikki's saying, several kilometers away. So you'd have to go down one mountain and then up this mountain to get these rocks here. So obviously we left that pretty mind blown with the idea that how do these massive stones? I mean, these things are massive. 50 tons. And how did men at that time get them up there? I don't know how technology now, we could probably, obviously you get different machines and cranes to make it happen. But back then, using just manpower and I guess the machinery they had at the time, how they get it up the hill. But that was a shocker to us. And those were the 4 highlights for us of the day trips to take around Cusco as you're in town on your way to Machu Picchu or just after Machu Picchu, that you can take in all these amazing Inca ruins. And these are just, we named 8 and we highlighted 4, but there are many, many that you can go to on a list to do and to see.
And these day trips that we took, we used that Cusco tourist ticket that I referred to earlier. And I highly suggest when you first arrive, if you're going to go to Cusco and you want to go to these Inca ruins, to get that Cusco tourist ticket because you save so much money. Every time we went to one of these Inca ruins, we didn't have to pay an entry fee. We just took our ticket. We had it stamped. They just punch a little hole in it saying that we've been to this site. We can't go back to it again. But we were able to walk around for as long as we wanted. I mean, we could have stayed there all day long if we wanted. And some of the places we stayed longer than others. Some places we stayed for like 3 hours because we were just like, oh my God, we need to soak it all in. Some of the places you didn't need to stay that long. I mean, you could stay for a half an hour and be okay with it. But we used that ticket to go to all these places that we just talked about.
Okay, let's get into Machu Picchu. Definitely a bucket list for me. Before we hit the road on our journey around the world, it was something that we had to go see. We talked about it a ton, and it was I was excited once we got there to finally discover it, and a lot of time and energy went into make sure we coordinated correctly. I know that we reached out to the person that helped us coordinate our trip probably 6 weeks before. She just gave us some advice, and we'll get into that a little bit. But yeah, Machu Picchu it is what it is. It's an amazing site and something that if you have a bucket list of travel, you should definitely have it on there. And there's a lot of different ways to see it, whether you're spending 4 days hiking up the trails or the way that we discovered it in a day or 2 days.
Yeah, so not only did we go and visit Machu Picchu, we actually climbed Huayna Picchu before we did Machu Picchu, and we trekked out to the Sundial. So we had an action-packed day, and it was a lot to do in a day, but definitely worth it. So Huayna Picchu is actually a huge mountain that rises over Machu Picchu and essentially gives you the most amazing bird's eye view overlooking everything around Machu Picchu and Machu Picchu itself. So what the Inca did is they built a trail up the side of Huayna Picchu leading to its temple and terraces on top. And what you should know about it is I didn't even know we were doing this. I mean, I kind of did. Probably about, I don't know, a week before we were going to do it, Matt's like, hey, I got these tickets to hike up Huayna Picchu. And I was like, I don't even really know what that means, but okay, I'm in. And the really cool thing about it is that I feel very fortunate now knowing what I know now because I didn't know then. But to actually be able to hike up Huayna Picchu, first of all, to be healthy enough to hike up Huayna Picchu is a blessing in itself. But not everyone gets to do that. So Huayna Picchu, to hike up it, there's only a certain amount of people that are allowed to hike up that mountain per day. And you have to purchase your tickets in advance. And this is why I'm bringing all of this up. So if this is something that you want to do, you should probably know these things.
There's 400 people that get to do this every day. There's 2 groups of 200. One group's at 7 a.m., one group's at 10 a.m. And you get, I think that you get about 3 hours to do the whole thing. So obviously we left our condo, our stay, our guest house or our hostel, whatever we were in, very early in the morning to get to Machu Picchu. And essentially, you walk through the Machu Picchu ruins in order to get to the check-in point for Huayna Picchu, and then you have to sign in. You have to have your passport because they have to make sure that they keep a count of everybody that goes up into the mountain because, like Nikki was describing, it can be a bit dangerous. So you have to put your name, your age, your country, and the time of departure. So they have all this information there. And that was really a cool process in itself because as you're signing up, you get to see that all kinds of names from people around the world and all age groups from around the world that have signed in before you. You get to see the list of people that are doing the journey with you. And that was pretty exciting and cool.
Yeah, another thing that I wanted to mention is that there are shuttle buses that leave from downtown that will take you to the actual hiking sites. So we were told that they start at 6 a.m. and you have to know that you have to bring your passport to do all of these hikes. So they're not going to let you hike up Huayna Picchu. They're not going to let you walk around Machu Picchu without your passport. And you can't get on the bus without your passport. So make sure you bring that. But we arrived at the bus station at 5:45 because we were like, well, we want to make the first bus to get on out there. Well, the first bus didn't even leave until 6:30. And when we got to the bus station at 5:45 in the morning, the line was already like around 2 buildings. So just know that like if you're getting there at 5:45 and you think you're early, you're definitely not. So it's going to be a definite early day when you're going to go and do these hikes. So get a lot of sleep. Don't be drinking cocktails the night before. This is a very physical thing that you're going to have to do. Make sure you're well rested. Wear the appropriate attire. If you have hiking boots, I highly suggest it. This hike is no joke. I mean, this hike, first of all, for Huayna Picchu is so steep. The pathways are really dangerous, in my opinion. I mean, depending on the weather. So the day that we went, it wasn't raining, but it had just rained. It was so slippery. And at times, like I really honestly felt like I was holding on for dear life. And I'm not trying to be dramatic, but there were steel cables that acted as railings on the side in some portions that I had to hold on to just so I could like navigate up and use it as a stairway. And like Matt said, there are people that we saw signed in before us that were in their 70s. And I was thinking to myself as I was climbing up Huayna Picchu, like if they can do this, I can do this too. And I guess it wasn't necessarily that it was hard, physically demanding. But I mean, if you're not paying attention, you're going to slip and fall. So you need to be rested. You need to have the appropriate shoes on. I mean, I'm not joking you. I saw people walking around in flip-flops. So it's like, like you can't just go there not being prepared. So we did the Machu Picchu hike, which I don't even know. I think it was like a 2-hour climb up the mountain, and then coming back down wasn't as difficult. But going up, it was just so steep that I felt like at any point, like I could have literally fallen off to the left and like gone overboard. But so we did the Machu Picchu hike up, came back down, then we went over to Machu Picchu, walked around. That's not really a hike. It's more of in my terms like trekking around, just walking around and just seeing everything. And then after that, we went out to the Sundial. And the Sundial, like you think you're going to get there, but you just keep walking and walking and walking. And I'm not sure if I remember how long that took, but it was hours. So I don't want to say how long because honestly, at this point, it's been so long that I can't remember, but at least 2 hours.
And the funny thing is you're going and there's enough Inca ruins on the way that you think you're there. And like there was a couple spots where we stopped and we're like, hey, is this the Sundial? And they're like, no, you're not close. Keep going. And yeah, it's not difficult, but it's just long. And by the time you get there, it is pretty cool. And I think now at some point it was used as like a president's helicopter pad. It's changed over time. And like I said, but it's the Sundial has changed over time on what they've used it for. But it is worth, I think the best part about the trip was it was worth the discovery of it. So because then you're so far away from the Machu Picchu site and then really far away from the Machu Picchu site that you can see that all of these things are the separation of them all and how they're laid out. And then you kind of just thinking about how they must have done all this all those years ago. It was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, highly, highly recommend. I am not an avid hiker like Matt is. So for him, I remember telling him that I thought that the Machu Picchu hike was scary just because I felt like I was going to fall off, and he told me that he disagreed with me. But just putting it out there, if it has just rained, you definitely feel like you're going to slip off. But if you are going to Machu Picchu, I highly recommend to do both because it is doable. And coming from a person who is not like an avid hiker, someone who does this all the time, I did both of those, the Machu Picchu and the Machu Picchu, and took my butt out to the Sundial all in one day. And I was completely fine. Like I wasn't even sore the next day. And Matt purchased actually a combination ticket, which allowed us to do both. And it was a really great deal. Doing the Machu Picchu and Machu Picchu combination only cost $60 per person. Totally worth it. And the Sundial's free. You just go on your own. If you can go and make it back, then that's cool. But definitely bucket list item, suggest it, and you will not regret it.
And just to kind of final thoughts, we did not get a tour guide. There's a lot of opportunities to get tour guides as you're entering. And Nikki and I are big fans of tour guides when we do city walks, city tours, sightseeing around there. And everybody has a different point of view on this. But our thought process around the ruins and Machu Picchu in particular is there's so much mystery and so many unknowns with this land that we're not convinced that the people that are giving these tours actually know the truth. And we had situations where we heard different tour guides telling different versions of their truth on what they're seeing at the Inca ruins. So for us, it was difficult to trust any point of view because we felt like there were more opinions than facts. So we decided to forego a guide and just take in the mystery ourselves. And then we could walk at our own pace, but then we could also just look at all this and just say, what do you think all this was? Some of the stuff they say we could overhear the tour guys talking about how some of it was like bath areas or private room areas. And we get that. I mean, there's probably enough history there to understand that certain things were built for a certain structure, but overall we just felt like it's still a mystery and it's something that we don't know that they're all the facts for. And I'd rather kind of form my own opinion on what that is than hear a tour guide tell me their broken version of that. The other cool thing that we discovered when we were there is we're not sure if it's a rumor. We don't think it's a rumor. We just think it's yet to be to come out. There's a whole nother Machu Picchu-esque site that is actually larger than Machu Picchu that they're currently excavating to prepare for visitors in the very near future. We heard 3 to 5 years. It might be less than that, but they're prepping it to be discovered for tourism. I'm sure that's going to be a massive tourism pop at that time. And the other thing that you need to worry about as you go is weather. We were super lucky with the cloudiness because you're up in the mountains. So in order to get amazing photos, the clouds have to cooperate, and they don't always do. When we were on the Machu Picchu side, it wasn't the greatest because we couldn't see Machu Picchu as much as we hoped to. But then once we got over to Machu Picchu, it kind of cleared up a little bit, and it was a gorgeous day. But it can rain a lot. It can get really cloudy, so it can be difficult, but that's just the luck of the draw. And then hopefully, if you had a chance to discover it, the weather will cooperate with you. But that as we were talking about with the tour guide, Nikki just let me know that in 2019, I think you have to have a tour guide, and I think they're probably trying to limit the trafficking, the foot traffic to Machu Picchu. So that's probably why they're making designated tour guides now. But hopefully, in that process, they'll get the truth in a synchronized manner, so you don't have all these tour guides telling different versions of the truth, because we heard some crazy stories from groups that made no sense, and we're like, there's no way that's real on what those people are telling. But regardless, it's a definite bucket list and some place that we loved, and we were happy that we went, and some place that you should go as well.
We love using our Blink monitoring system while traveling the world. It's very easy to set up the system before leaving your hotel, your hostel, or your Airbnb where you're staying. And we've packed one security camera for our travels. And it's really important for us to know if anyone has been in our room for the obvious reasons, but also so we just don't accuse anyone of stealing, in case we just simply misplace something. So once you leave your room, you arm the device using the Blink mobile app. It's very, very easy. And when someone moves in front of the camera sensors, it activates immediately while a bright light sends a video to your phone. We also love our Blink monitoring system to look into our home, where we have 3 cameras set up, and the app will alert us to any activity that goes on while we're away. So get your Blink monitor today to feel safe while you travel and to monitor your home remotely. It's super easy to set up, it's cost-friendly, battery operated, and the Blink app can be accessed from more than one device, and you can also have up to 10 cameras on each security system, and there is no monthly fee. So check out passportjoy.com/blink. Again, passportjoy.com/blink to watch the ease of use and how we set up our Blink security camera system as we travel the world. Another thing we use is called Priority Pass, and we absolutely love our Priority Pass. It's just a great way for frequent travelers to gain access to airport lounges around the world. And our airport experiences have been so much more enjoyable, so we can just spend time, unwind, and relax in a priority lounge right before our flight. And the lounges are quiet, they're connected spaces where you can work or even take a quick nap and get a bite to eat. A lot of these lounges have complimentary food and beverages, alcohol, and Wi-Fi in most of the lounges. There are even lounges that have spas and showers that allow for a quick refresh after long travel days or in between your flights. We've saved a ton of money with Priority Pass by not having to purchase food in the airport before or in between our flights, and it's just a great way to kick back and relax. So join Priority Pass today. It's really affordable, and there are over 1,000 lounges in 500 cities across 130 countries. Check out passportjoy.com/pass. Again, passportjoy.com/pass to find out other membership benefits of Priority Pass. Our other tips and tools we use can be found at passportjoy.com/tools.
Say
Thank you so much for listening. That is it for this episode. As always, please check out passportjoy.com and the podcast link to look at the show notes of this episode, where we break down all the interesting tips and locations that we talked about with the links to additional information there. We've helped about 6 different couples now travel to Cusco through our links and the blog posts that 6 that we know they've reached out and we've talked to and shared the information with. So we know that the information is valuable. So please look at the website and check that stuff out. As always, sign up for the newsletter on the website as well. That's where you'll get the weekly tips and things that we're doing as we travel around the world. And also on the website, you'll find our latest blog posts, travel tips and tools, and all of our social media links. So go there and check that out. All right, we'll be back for another episode next week. Until then, safe travels to wherever you might be heading next.